if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Having a partner is going to be the most difficult part of your business, and it's going to be the most
What's going on, everybody? So on today's show, we have Allan Draper. Man, Allan, welcome to the show, bro.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
So you're killing the game in the pest control industry, a few other industries.
Mm-hmm.
I see you all over Instagram, and you're everywhere right now. And tell us a little bit about what you do, and then we can kind of go. I want to go into like a backstory of your life, but what do you do in the pest control world?
Yeah, so I founded a pest control company in the Detroit area in 2015, and just kind of been doing that. We have branches from Long Island, New York to Reno, Nevada now. So I'm not really involved in the day-to-day of that anymore. Mm-hmm. But I'm an entrepreneur, man. I like business ideas. I'm an angel investor, so I help startups and my thing is right now, and kind of my legacy is to help 10,000 people build businesses and wealth through making short-term sacrifices. That's the thing, is that especially with the younger generation, I see what's going on with social media, where everything's glamorized, everything's made to look easy, and so I'm trying to set the record straight on that.
I like that too, because I see that as well and I know a lot of wealthy people, not necessarily, they're not big on Instagram, but they're wealthy and they have like 2 followers, but they're like worth 2, 3, 500 million. Yeah. And none of them are flashy.
Yeah.
Not a single soul. Those guys. And I like that you're saying that, because I'm not flashy either. I think like yourself is I'd rather put the money into something else, let it work, or at the very least just put it in the bank. But if you keep blowing it, eventually there's going to be none. Right.
Dude, I on my Instagram about a year ago, I put this poll and I said, would you rather be wealthy and look poor, or look wealthy and be poor, or, not have financial resources, whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that one's easy. Everyone's going to say I'd rather be wealthy and not look wealthy.
Yeah.
It was 50-50, dude.
Yeah, that's
50%
crazy.
of the people said they would rather look wealthy than actually be wealthy. So kind of shows what the Instagram generation, what they think.
Well, it's today's world. It goes back to like, how we're operating in today's society is everything's so fast, instant gratification. If you want food, you just call it. It's coming right to you. You don't even have to get up off your chair, right? And so it's the same thing as the instant gratification is the look, right?
Yeah.
Right? You look it rather than feel it. Like, it's one thing to know like, hey, I have some money in my bank, whatever, 100, 200, 300, a million, whatever it is, right? Then one thing to say, you know what, I have 20,000 in bills and I have 5,000 in my bank. That's kind of, I'd rather feel like good knowing like, hey, I'm cool for 2 years or 5 years or whatever, right?
Yeah. Sure.
So I like that. So Allan, like, you're from a tiny town in Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us, like, how do you, like, you got this entrepreneurial mindset, and everyone always wants to know, how'd you start this? How do you start that? And, how'd you turn this way? So I want everyone to know how you got this way. Was it a parent? Was it your upbringing? Like, kind of take us down from when you were a kid to, where we're at.
So I've always kind of had side hustles. I grew up in a farming community, about 2,000 people. There's one stoplight. There's no McDonald's like within 20 miles or something. And so it's, it's a labor intensive area where I grew up. And so I've had a job since the time I was like 8 or 9. Started with raking leaves, shoveling snow. I had a newspaper route every day after school, starting at the age of 10. I used to work at a local bakery and fry donuts before high school. So I'd go in at 5 a.m., wake up at 4:30 all throughout high school. And I was playing sports after school and stuff. And so it wasn't easy to do. But the longer that I'm in this, Chris, the more I realize that a lot of of who I am as an entrepreneur is my personality. It's like, dude, it's in my blood. Like, I enjoy sports. It's just like one of those things, man. And I think there's like a spectrum where it's like, there's people that are like, I'll partner with somebody, or maybe I'll invest in a company, but won't do it my own. And then I think risk tolerance goes into that also. But, I've, my dad and my uncles kind of had some smaller businesses, but they were solo entrepreneurs, right? Where they would, cut grass, but they would be the ones doing it.
Yeah, solopreneur.
Yeah, solopreneur. My dad had a little auto body shop, but he'd have a hired man every once in a while, but most of the time just did the work on his own. So I think it's like in my blood that way too, a little genetic. But for me, I consider myself fairly young, have a lot of my life in front of me, and it's been years since I've had to work for money. And the funny thing is that when I got to that point, one day I was kind of going through some things and I'm like, man, I don't have to work anymore. And I'm like, well, I have nothing else to do. This is what I want to do. This is how I want to spend my time. I got really good at my job. I got really good at building businesses because I no longer had to do it for money. So, for me, it's just, I like doing it, man. I look at it as a type of hobby.
I like that. So was your mom, she was like stay-at-home mom type thing?
Yeah, I grew up in pretty humble circumstances. So I slept on the floor for the first 6 years of my life. So with my brother, there are 4 boys in 1 bedroom with 2 beds. But I wouldn't trade it for anything, by the way. And so there were times where she had to go get a job to make ends meet, but majority she was stay at home. Yeah.
So do you when I look back at my childhood, I had a really, really rough childhood, kind of not good, but I look back, I'm like, that stuff helped make me, like you sleeping on the floor, watching your dad go and grind and working his butt off. Not really, he's not, I'm not talking bad, but like he's just
for sure.
He's making just enough to take care of your family. Your mom's probably stressed, got rugrats running around, like all these knucklehead kids, like 4 boys, no girls.
So there were 6 of us.
Oh, 6 of you.
Yeah, 6 of us. So the oldest and the youngest girls, and then 4 boys in the middle.
Yeah. So you have, but 4 boys, like you guys are probably fighting and everybody's fighting.
Oh,
right?
Not throwing
competition,
knives at each other.
Everything, right?
Yeah.
And mom's over there screaming and yelling, like behave, right?
Yeah.
But I think like you look back at that, like those times real early, like that had to have some impact in your life. Whether, because some people look at their, and it's sad when people do this, is they look at their childhood or something and they start blaming a parent. They start blaming somebody for something. It's like, come on, you're 40 now. Quit the blame game. But do you think like that made you better, and that part of that, that rough childhood made you better?
For sure, and it's something I think about a lot because my kids don't have it naturally, and so it weighs on me a little bit because I know how helpful it was to have that perspective. Mm-hmm. Although my siblings have kind of gone different directions. One of my brothers is one of my business partners and does very well. And so they've kind of gone different directions. One of them's a school teacher. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But it kind of reminds me of a story I heard one time of, this guy, he's a news reporter walking down the street, and this guy asks him for a couple of bucks. He's sitting there on the street, can tell he's homeless. The guy, stoops down, talking to him for a little bit, finds out this guy has a twin brother. And he's really interested in the story, and this guy's telling him how terrible his childhood was. And he's like, yeah, my dad, he would beat us. He was an alcoholic. And he's like, well, tell me about your brother. And he's like, oh, my brother, he lives in the city. And he's like, wait a minute. So, does he have a job? He's like, oh, yeah, very successful. Tracks down his brother. So after talking to this guy, and he's like, so, like, how did you end up like this, right? How did you end up as a bum? And he's like, look how I grew up, man. How could that be any different? Alcoholic father, beat us, whatever. Ends up tracking down the brother, very successful family, whatever. And he's like, exactly. He's like, hey, how did you end up like this? How did you break the cycle? And he's like, look at how I grew up. How could I have been any different?
Yeah, he didn't want none of that.
Exactly.
And the other brother gave into all of it.
Yep. I think it goes back to that fixed versus growth mindset. Right. Okay. There's folks that say, hey, this is my life. This is the hand that I was dealt. It is what it is. And then others, like the successful brother, he has a growth mindset. He's like, dude, I'm going to change something. I'm going to do things differently. Mm-hmm. Now, there are people that are, born into, raised, have some really terrible circumstances, like more than I could imagine. And so it's easy for me to kind of say, oh yeah, you got to have a growth mindset. So I can only speak from my perspective because I can't imagine some people, and some of their stories.
Yeah.
But that's the difference.
Yeah. So optimism versus pessimism, the glass is half full versus half empty. What do you think? Like, you're raising your kids now, 2 boys and 1 girl, and versus when you were young, you guys were poor, you're sleeping on the floor, and your kids, obviously they don't have to deal with any of that, right? And the same as my kids. And do you think, like, because sometimes I look at my kids and I'm like, man, I don't want to struggle on them. Like, I wish to struggle, but it's different. Do you see that? Like, it's just like there's something inside you because you felt that versus what the kids feel today. Like, they don't get to see it, they don't get to taste it. You know what I mean? That struggle, that hardship.
Oh, for sure. So it's something that I struggle and I talk to my wife quite a bit about is because she grew up similarly, and we have to find a way for them to struggle because that's what makes us tough. That's what makes us appreciate things.
Yeah.
And so because it's not financially, because my wife and I want to enjoy things. Like,
of course, you work for it.
Yeah, we work for it. So we have houses in some different locations. We like to spend summers outside of the state of Arizona. And so we want to enjoy that. And of course, we're taking our kids along with us. They're 11, 9, and 5. And so we struggle. Like, how do we allow them to find challenges and adversity, although it'll be tough for it to be financial?
Yeah. No, I look at my kids, I say, and my oldest he'll be 22. And it's the same thing, because they had a better life and the struggle is not real.
Yeah, exactly.
Some people are like, the struggle's real. I don't know. I don't know how, I mean, for some people, but if your parents, like, I grew up, I was given up right before I turned 8. My mom was a drug addict,
Dang, bro.
Yeah, it was real rough. Born in the projects, jumped in a gang at the age of 11. And so I grew up rough, real rough. Maybe, not, there was people worse than me and crazier and all that stuff. I just lived, that's how we grew up. And so I look at it like, hey, a lot of those experiences helped me become, I got a lot of scars and stuff that show from it. I'm jacked up in some areas, but it's helped me become who I am, and it's helping me get to where I want to go. You know what I mean? And the same thing as you mentioned earlier, is you wanted to help 10,000 people build like either a business or wealth or however that looks. That's kind of why I started the podcast, is like so we can show people, yeah, I want to talk about a lot of topics and all those things, but it's like to show like, hey, if Allan did it, if Chris can do it, if this guy can do it, that girl can do it, you can do it too. Because it's yeah, you're cruising right now, but you weren't at one time, you know what I mean? And so that young entrepreneur, whether they're, 20 years old or 50 years old, they're going through the hardship, but it's like, let's keep going. Let's keep going. Let's talk about that. Is like, you said you started on the pest control, and obviously that's cruising. I think that's still going, right?
Yep.
Like, was that your first business?
That was my first non-real estate business.
Yeah.
Yep.
So let's talk about like your first losses and like where you had to overcome something, whether it was in real estate or in the pest control. Like, can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh man. Like,
cause that's the fire right there.
I mean, it's interesting that you say like, hey, your message is, hey, look at what we did.
Yeah.
And if we did it, you can do it.
Yeah.
That's totally my thing. A lot of people, I have a hard time with social media, man, because so much of it is fake. And that's my message is like, hey, in order to be great, you have to sacrifice something. Find out what you're willing to sacrifice.
Absolutely.
On social media, you see all these gurus, and they make it appear that they're special. Now, there's some freaks out there. There's dudes like Elon Musk, those, but you can be very, very successful regardless of who you are. And that's my message is, look at me. Like, I've had some success in my life. Besides taking risks and working hard, making sacrifices, I'm not very special. I'm really not. And, it comes down to just figuring out what it is that, we can do, what we can do to kind of separate ourselves and just kind of figure out what that grind is that we're willing to, to engage in to have some success. But it's not, some folks are just out of touch. But kind of going back to my pest control story, I talk about all the time on my Instagram and social media, my failures. Dude, I have a software company right now. It's in so much trouble, man. It's like, I'm days away from closing up shop.
Yeah.
And I've spent the last 3 years working on it, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, knocking on $1 million I've invested into it. And people are like, Allan, dude, do you ever fail? I've had somebody ask me that. It's like, dude, my first pest control company, it was actually called Freedom Pest Control. And it never got off the ground. That was my very first business. No one's ever heard of it because it failed. And people are like, yeah, Allan, do you ever fail? Yeah. And so I try to find this balance, Chris, of like, I don't want to sound like a complainer.
No, I like it.
And I want to make sure that I'm motivating people. I tell them, hey, it's going to be the hardest thing you've ever done. Do it anyway.
Absolutely.
Right. But yeah, I fail all the time. I currently have 28 businesses with 21 business partners. I have 10 failed partnerships and growing. So it's like, happens all the time. And I try to be as open as I can about it, so that I can like help people know, dude, just because your first idea didn't work, or you had a partner leave you, or, you ran out of money, or whatever it is, dude, that doesn't define you. That doesn't define who you are.
Do you think like people tend to give up too soon? It's I've seen this happen a lot, and I'm sure you've done it. Even when we're kids, we quit on something like way too early, right? It's hard. But do you think people just, they get some idea, whether it's making shirts or starting pest control, whatever it is, and it's hard to start something, right? And do you think people naturally just quit too soon?
Yeah, I think that's the tendency. I personally have a problem of holding on too long. So I've had several businesses that failed, and I ended up putting, my software company, for example, I should have shot it a long time ago. But generally speaking, and I think part of the problem is, Chris, people think it's going to be easy. I had this friend of mine recently that posted on his social media that he's not going down the path of quote unquote having a job. He's going to be an entrepreneur. And my first thought was, what do you think being an entrepreneur is? Like, as opposed to having one boss, now every single customer that you have is your boss.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
That's the thing, is that the young folks, it's like, yes, it's difficult, and it's difficult for everybody. You look in social media and you see people in these fake private jets, like the studios they have in LA, where they go to do photo shoots and it looks like they're inside of a jet and they're actually in a storage container. Have you seen that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so so everyone's like, oh yeah, first year in business, $10 million in revenue. It's like, that's their expectation. So when something comes along and they don't hit 10 million or whatever, somebody quits on them, they quit because they're like, wait, man, I'm doing it wrong because it's supposed to be easy. Yeah. Yeah. And I think people too, if they don't hit the mark, like there's depression starts to set in, like, I can't do this. I can't. Yeah. There was a quote, I heard it earlier, and it's by Albert Einstein, and it says, it's not that I'm so smart, it's just that I stay with the problem longer. Yeah. So I think that's part of the quit. Obviously, in business, you have to know when to quit. But I think if you're starting out something and you're quitting, some people are quitting at 3 months, at 6 months, at 1 year. I mean, it takes, depending on what it is, 5, 10, 15, some people a long time to hit that, crack that nut. And once you do, it's like the gold rush, Yeah. And I think, like, if you have something, you got to work it, you got to, and if you haven't worked all angles and it's still not working, then there's an issue. Yeah. Yeah. Right. And it's like, for me, it's why are you quitting? Yeah. That's how you gauge whether you should quit. Are you quitting because it's hard? That's good. Are you quitting because, you didn't get the success you thought you were going to get? Are you quitting because you're not making the money you thought you were going to make? Or are you quitting because you've battle tested the idea, you have mentors that you look up to and trust that say, hey, maybe you should pivot. And I think 90% of the time, quitting is the wrong option. I think you should pivot. Mm-hmm. And, any business, regardless of what you start, is going to be different in execution than it is in conception and in what you thought it was going to be. So you go into it, number one, hey, why am I quitting? Like, is it because it's hard? Then definitely don't quit. And then number two, like, is there a way for me to pivot and keep going?
I think that's true, because even when that quit is inside of you, it's hard to get that quit out of you.
Oh, it's habitual.
You just fall back on that.
Yes.
In every area of your life.
Yes, every area.
Right. So and I'll tell you, this is like something I'm seeing right now. So I'm starting to work out. I've been working out a couple months, and I'm trying to lose weight. I haven't done it for a lot of years. And so I notice I'm on a treadmill, like it gets to like 10 minutes, it starts getting hard, and I want to just stop. And like, it's like my mind is just saying stop at 10 minutes or 12 minutes. And I'm like, and before, I remember 4 or 5 years ago, I'd do a treadmill for 30 minutes easy. But my mind keeps saying, and I'm looking at the time, and I'm like, and then, so this morning I was like, I got to figure out a way like to start this thing, not look at the time, not look at anything, and just go, because my mind's like, quit at 10 minutes, and I think that's what happens when we quit. Is it's ingrained, and it starts. Yeah. So you quit here. Oh, it's okay to quit. It's okay to quit. It's okay to quit. Next thing you know, it's like you quit everywhere in life. You quit on everyone in life. Yep. All the people that are cheering for you, your kids, your parents, whatever it is. If you're on TV, your fans, whatever. It's like you cannot just quit. But I like what you said though. Is pivot. Like okay, this didn't work. Let's put our energy somewhere else. Yeah. Right. Because if you just stop, and then now you don't have nowhere, if you just imagine if you're driving a car, you just stop and you get out and leave the car right there. One is you're walking back, right? So you need to like, okay, turn around, let's park this thing and let's game plan it and get back in the car and drive off to the next destination, So I love that. So like you got all these businesses, I think you got a podcast as well, right?
Yeah, I do. I'm rebranding it right now, so it's still available, but I haven't launched anything new in the last couple of months, and relaunching in July, 2024.
Nice. And so all these businesses, so when people are, and so that's another thing I see too is you've successfully done it. You've been doing it for a while. How long? How old were you when you started the first business?
2014.
So 2014, and you're just cruising. Open them up, partnerships. And some people, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong or elaborate on this, is some people want to jump into too many businesses at one time. Oh, yeah. Or at the beginning before they conquer. What do you think about that?
Oh, that's so terrible. I have young entrepreneurs come to me and they're like, hey, Allan, I want to do what you do. And I'm like, well, what is it that I do or that you think that I do? I think I'm a visionary first, but I can operate a company. Yeah.
Do you think like, for some of these operators, or I wouldn't say operators, but like people that, saying I'm in construction, right? And then, the whole thing for me started in drywall, right? That's going to help me get to where I'm going. And so I'll just use as an example. You have these guys that are, say, hanging drywall. And then they're like, hey, I want to start this business. But then they never get off the ground because they don't learn the business side. So it's kind of that the worker approach type thing. Yeah. Do you see that a lot, like in businesses where they're like, yeah, I got really good at this one thing, and I really think I can kill it if I start my own business. What's your take on that?
Happens all the time. Yeah. Michael Gerber wrote a book called The E-Myth that's exactly about that. Yeah. Where it's like,
what's it called? What's the book called?
It's called The E-Myth.
The E-Myth.
Michael Gerber. And the concept is, he calls them technicians. He tells a story about this baker, and she's the best baker in town. She makes the best muffins, man, but she's working for somebody else. Yeah. And so she's like, you know what? Why am I working for somebody else? I'm better at this than the person that I'm working for. So she hangs a shingle. She goes and opens her bakery and quickly realizes that she doesn't have time to bake anymore because she's busy with the payroll and ordering all the ingredients and making sure the equipment's up, clean and all this stuff, and marketing and the building lease and all this stuff. And, you as an entrepreneur, you have to decide, hey, do I love the technical aspects? Is it the sales? I have this all the time. Sales guys have come to me and, man, I'm really good at sales. And it's true. They are. And sales is an important part of business. Yeah. But dude, you'll quickly find out that you don't have time for sales.
Not when you're operating.
Yeah, when you're doing everything. Yep. you're cutting your time doing what you're really good at down to nothing. So the idea is like, hey, I need to create a business, not a job.
Yeah.
Because if they go into it and they just end up creating a job for themselves, like this baker, it's just not going to work. The business will fail.
Yeah, it stays mom and pop. And then the first hardship, it's going to get really hard.
Yep.
I remember when I started, so in 09, so I started the company in 09. And so 07, the market started crashing. 08, it was when we all felt everything, you know. And at that time, I had this I wanted to go on my own, you know, and I was already kind of foreseeing what was going to happen. I mean, I didn't foresee what economy was going to tank, and I remember I started talking about it, and I remember telling my old boss at the time, hey, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And he just looked at me and laughed, you know, because I was like, I'm going to do this, I'm better than you. And I'm better than him now, but not at the time, right?
Yeah.
But I was like, yeah, and I'm better than you. And I didn't tell him that, but that's what I thought, you know, and I'm going to go do this. I'm going to do this different, and you'll do this wrong. And the next thing you know, I did start, right? There was no work, so I was forced to start, right? And I sucked. I was terrible, right? You know, because I never did all the other things or was exposed to several things, you know, because there's a lot more to this, you know, CPAs, there's all the accounting stuff. There's all kinds of stuff, standard operating procedures. There's everything. And, but I remember I was like, man, this is hard. Yeah. You know, and I'm getting my butt whipped for a few years, and, you know, and it took me a while to kind of get on our feet, my wife and myself. But I see it now too, is we've had a few guys start their own businesses branch off of us, you know? And so I went into business. I was just about to turn 29. And so I was always at the same age as these people, and they're looking at me like, oh, if he can do it, I'm way, you know, Chris, you should change the way you do this and change the way you do that. And I just like, okay, you know, whatever. Yeah. And everyone has their own opinion, right? And then next thing you know, they want to quit because they think they knew something better than me. But I was like, yeah, you can change that one thing for that one project, but not for the other 30 we got going on, bro. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it works for you and your two people, but not the other 100 that are over here. Yeah, exactly. You know, so a lot of people don't think past the skill set that they actually have and start thinking, okay, how do I become better at business, or how do I learn, you know, the next step, you know? I think that's what happens. And especially today, like everybody wants everything fast, right? Like we're talking about. And I remember starting around the same time I started the business, I didn't know how to use a computer. I graduated from 8th grade. So I told you I was terrible. So I had to learn how to use a computer at night, go try to work jobs, all these different things, and just grind. You know, I'm working 18 hours a day. And so, but I had to put in the time and say, okay, here's where I'm weak. I don't know how to use a computer, so I'm going to just put in 4 or 5 hours a day. Yeah. You know what I mean? I don't know how to do this. I'm going to put in this much. And as software started getting more relevant, I'm going to buy this software and learn this. And then, you know what I mean? And so I'm going to go to this group and this meeting. And I think a lot of people won't do that either because it takes too much of their time. Yeah. You know what I mean? What do you think?
Yeah, no, there's, when you start a business, you like trade one job for a whole bunch, right? Yeah. And so you have to figure out like, you know, and there's ways to, once you're up and running, to pay people to fill the gaps. But, you know, cash management, lack of cash flow is the number one reason why businesses fail. So when you start your first business, you have to learn how to do a bunch of things. You got to be a jack of all trades in a lot of ways. And at least to the level where you can understand it. And then even when other people are doing it, you still got to be able to manage it. If someone comes in, they tell you about a certain procedure, or they tell you about a certain marketing tactic or whatever, and you don't understand enough to manage it or make a decision, then your business is going to suffer because of it. Yeah,
I totally agree. If you need to know a little bit about a lot, right? Yep. And do you see that happen? Like when you were coming up, did you see that happen in your own life where you're like, man, I don't know enough about this, and like that was like some lack in that area or something like that?
Yeah. So there were a lot of things. I taught myself corporate finance, how to do books and understand, different financial statements to be able to make decisions and run and operate a business. I dabbled with digital marketing and SEO, which I knew nothing about. And now one of my businesses is I own a digital marketing agency.
Nice.
I don't do the work, other folks do, but I knew enough to be able to manage it. But for sure, I say that starting a business and being an entrepreneur is the greatest form of microscope that you can put on yourself as an individual. There's very few things. I think marriage and business are the two things where you can learn the most about yourself in a very short period of time.
Yeah, and because you're fully exposed.
It's like
everyone's seen what you're doing.
Exactly. So you get feedback from all these things, employees, from vendors, from customers, clients, whatever, and you're vulnerable. That's the thing, is that when you start a business, you'll never be more vulnerable in your life, because I remember, so I was practicing law here in Phoenix. I went to law school, practiced law for a few years before I started my pest control company. And I remember a couple of weeks before I started my pest control company, before I quit my law job, I was sitting there in my office thinking, I can't wait till I start my business, because I'm going to have more money and more time. And I immediately had less of both of those.
Yeah. And that's so true though, that you say that, because people are like, I want to make more money. And even like I said, I have workers, they'll come in like, how can I make more money and do less? I'm like, did you hear what you just said? How do you make more money and do less? Later on that happens.
Yeah.
But but then even, does it really happen? Because we continue to challenge ourselves. So we're always, if unless you become satisfied, at subpar level, then cool. You'll make more money and do less.
Yeah.
But if you're not satisfied and you want to keep winning, you're going to keep doing more. You're going to make more, but you're going to keep doing more, because you're challenging yourself to go up that mountain.
For sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, for sure. I like how you said that, because in order to make more money, you may do less in terms of like hours that you're working, but the value that you bring has to be greater.
Yeah. Like,
I'm a capitalist at heart. I believe that people vote with their dollars.
Yeah.
And so if you're worth it, then the market will find you.
Yeah.
And so that would be my response is, okay, well, you want to work less. That's okay. But in order to be paid more, your value has to increase. And if you're coming to me with, don't bring the problem to me. You just brought me a problem.
Yeah.
Bring me a solution, and then let's talk.
So you have to learn the solution, right? So whether you think you're working less in the job or the activity, in order to bring value, you still got to keep learning. You still got to keep growing. You still got to keep pouring into yourself, which takes time.
Yep.
So you can't just be like, so once you become stagnant, that whole, I want to make more, work less, I don't even believe in that. Like, let's just keep going. Let's keep going, and let's make as much as we can, give as much as we can, learn as much as we can, and then we'll die.
Yep.
Whether it's next year or in 50 years, that's just go till you die. I don't know. I don't believe in retirement.
There's no other option. I'll never retire.
Yeah, I don't believe in retirement.
Why would I retire? Like, I love what I do. I love building, and it's that's like I like the Suns, right?
Yeah.
I never see myself not being a Suns fan, whether I'm working or not. It's the same thing. It's one of my hobbies. It's something I enjoy, and it's just a different perspective than a lot of people have. They're like, I can't wait till I retire and then live off my retirement. Man, that's why people die young. It's because they don't have that purpose. The
mindset, the whole mindset too. Yeah. They're ready to quit. They're ready. I mean, I tell people, I remember telling our church, I said, I told the whole church from the stage, I'm like, hey, because a lot of people, I was hearing people like, oh, I can't wait to retire and all this stuff. And I just addressed the whole church. I was supposed to do like tithes and offering, and I was just like, I'm gonna tell them what I think.
Nice.
and I was like, I don't remember reading the Bible. It says to retire, guys. Some of these people lived really long time, and they worked their land forever. Yeah. Working your land is what we're doing right now. You and I, we're working our land. We're working what we have. We're growing the crops. It's not freaking corn, but it's the same thing. Yeah. Right. So we're gonna work our land until we die. Yeah. So I love it. So going back to like some of the businesses you own, do you own a law firm?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I'm a named partner in a law firm here in the Valley.
But you don't, because in my mind, I try to think of something else to do. Then I was like, oh, what if I start a law firm? And then I'm like, how can I do that? Can I get partners? But you did it. You didn't get your law degree because you quit.
So no. So I did.
You pivoted.
No,
you didn't quit.
I pivot exactly. So I did get my law degree. I graduated from Arizona State Law School.
Okay.
And I practiced law here in Phoenix for a few years.
Nice.
Fast forward about a decade, I had a couple of law school buddies reach out to me and looking for some help on the business side, operations side. And so I took equity, a minority share in a law firm. I don't practice law, so they handle all of that, but help with some startup cash and got my name on the door. So
nice.
Something I was planning on doing when I was in law school.
Yeah.
Adding that, entrepreneurial personality. So it's cool to kind of see it. My partners they're awesome, man. I love doing business with people that I like.
What kind of law firm is it? What do they practice?
So we do commercial litigation, so lawsuits. Mm-hmm. We do some labor law, so if there's an issue with an employee and things like that, mostly.
So you guys are going after the employers?
Yeah,
don't tell me you're doing that.
I think that's the current state of things with an idea to pivot in the future.
Yeah. I know. All it takes to get what is it called when you get like a group of people together? The guys.
Class action.
Yeah. Start these class So a buddy of mine got sued with a class action for labor laws and stuff like that.
You got to be real careful.
Yeah, he all his guys turned against him.
Yeah,
I was like, oh shoot, yeah.
No, and I've had all sorts of things. I operate in my businesses are in about 15 different states.
Nice.
And some of them are more challenging to operate in.
Yeah.
And so I've seen my fair share of that.
Can you name off like the industries you're in?
Yeah. So I'm in pest control. So my pest control companies and sister companies count for about 12 of those businesses.
Okay.
Within that, I have an operations center that's like a call center, and we do that type of thing. I have 2 marketing companies under that umbrella. I own a company called Lizard SEM, which is a digital marketing agency. We build websites, help people with SEO, pay-per-click, Google stuff, branding. I own a software company, own a law firm, I own several real estate holding companies. I have online course for folks learning how to build pest control companies.
That's cool.
I have different investment, like capital companies. I own a chunk of a credit monitoring company. I'm involved in several software startups that I don't operate. I own a contact marketing company where we send gifts to people to just get their attention, like high level people. Mm-hmm. So that's a few of them there.
No, that's pretty good. Like you're kind of, and a lot of it kind of intertwines.
Yeah.
Actually, almost most of it.
So what happened is when I would build a business, I would vertically integrate, right? So I needed a digital marketing agency for my company. My pest control company wasn't super happy with the options that were out there. So I'm like, dude, I'm going to just build one. And of course, it was a lot more work and more difficult than I thought it was going to be. But that company is just absolutely crushing it now. I have a great partner who runs the show. I attend an hour meeting every week. And that's been my model now is I try to find an operational partner. I'll bring some cash and some concepts to the table. And then I'll find somebody that's like, hey, I want some equity, but I need kind of a salary. I need to make ends meet.
You're the money man.
Exactly. And then they'll help me build it.
Yeah. And so what do you say to like the entrepreneurs where, they're thinking, hey, should I do this by myself? Should I get a partner? Because you hear the pros and cons about everything, right? I'm looking at venturing out and doing more ventures now. I feel comfortable. So I know it's going to take partnerships. So I'm cool with the idea, but a lot of people are like, nah, don't get a partner. Or some people are like, I only have partners. What do you say to those people that are watching, about that idea of having a partner versus not, pros and cons?
Man, that's a great topic. I live by the saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Having a partner is going to be the most difficult part of your business, and it's going to be the most rewarding. And I have 10 failed partnerships or something like that, right? I have people that have quit on me, and a lot of it's my fault, things that I've learned how to do better. But a partnership is just about trying. It's just like marriage, man. It's like, dude, you can have a really bad day, and that's not the question, because those days are going to come.
Yeah.
The question is, what are you going to do the next day?
Yeah.
Are you going to wake up with this attitude of, hey, man, tough day, let's just try again? When I'm looking for a partner, the number one thing that I look for, it's not what money do they bring to the table, what experience do they bring to the table, what opportunities they bring to the table, who do they know? The number one thing that I look for, and everything else is like miles behind, is what is this guy going to do, or this girl, when they have the worst day of their life, and the next day they just have to get back in the saddle.
Yeah.
And if I can get to the point where I realize, hey, they're going to keep trying, you can't fail, man. How do you fail if you have somebody that's like, it doesn't matter what comes, we're going to keep trying? But I've missed that mark a few times with some of my partners.
Yeah. So for someone out there saying, hey, I'm looking at a partnership, is there like a timeline to say, spend this much time with that person? Is it a feeling? Is it, because sometimes you think, and I've never had a partnership, but I'm just playing devil's advocate. You're like, you get, and you hear about these stories like yourself, as you get into these relationships, these business partnerships, and then you're like, shit, I wasn't going to cuss, but screw it. Is like, this is terrible. This person, like,
oh man,
they keep overreacting. They're crazy. Yeah. I wish I'd have known this beforehand. Yeah. Like, what are these telling signs? And you said some of them, because I think people need to pay attention to this is, when you are going for a partnership, like, vet the person, and then does that partner, I'm asking all kinds of questions at the same time. Does that partner need to have the same passion as, say, yourself, right? Or what if they don't have the passion, then what else do they need to bring? Yeah.
Oh, so many good questions there. So they did this survey to find out with business partners what percentage of the load they felt like they were carrying. And in almost every single response, the partner felt like they were carrying the majority of the load, or that the other partner was not doing their part. Mm-hmm. It's very common. It's every single partnership. Even in cases of silent partnerships, if they're just bringing in money, whatever, it's not enough. So you have to go into it knowing that. But, going back to your first question, how do you know? Man, that's the magic bullet. If I had a crystal ball, I'd live in Vegas, right? But you have to see that person in really difficult circumstances. It doesn't have to be business. It could be something that happens with their family or their church or their community. Someone's talking bad about them. You have to see them in a very difficult situation and see how they're responding to that. If they get really emotional and they talk about quitting, look at their longevity. Look at, if they're a grass is always greener type of person. That's the opposite of what you want. You want the person that's like, it doesn't matter what color the grass is on the other side of the fence. And so you do have to feel comfortable with them. That being said, there's an advantage to being a first mover in business. Sometimes you just got to act. And if my digital marketing agency, the first partner it didn't work out with.
Yeah.
And the partner that I have now, it's been a couple of years now. He's like one of my best friends. Our company's doing awesome. If I hadn't got started, if I didn't start, then I wouldn't be where I am today. So with that company, so you kind of got to move. I don't know that you're ever going to get to the point where you're like, okay, this is the person I'm 100% sure. There's always going to be a little bit of doubt, and you just got to move. But you do have to get a feel for how they handle difficult circumstances and whether they have this grass is greener mentality.
So for the majority of your partners, do you feel like that the relationship is better when the person is opposite of you?
You definitely,
like your yang.
Definitely. You need somebody. And what happens is when you go into a partnership, you value all of these differences.
Yeah.
And then you're in it a couple of years, and then you start picking at them because of the differences, right? So I have a partner that's really creative and he knows branding and all that stuff. And I'm very logical. I look at numbers. I think like that. And so it's when you go into the partnership, you're like, oh, that's awesome. He thinks differently. He has this different skill set, way of thinking. And then you get into it and you're like, dude, no, the brand doesn't matter. Like, so you have to remember that. Like, hey, those differences, they're so important to who we are as a company, so we can see things and solve problems from different angles. But also remember that when you disagree with them. Yeah. That's a big part of it.
Yeah. So the disagreements are going to come. But as long as the resolution follows.
You got to have this, when you get into a discussion, a disagreement, my partnerships that have failed, every single one of them has failed because we couldn't talk to each other.
Oh, wow.
In some of those situations, they just completely ghosted me, wouldn't respond to my text, whatever. That is the end. That is the end if you can't communicate with them. The second thing is you go in, you let your feelings be known. When you leave that room or phone call or Zoom, whatever it is, where you're, regardless of whether the outcome is going to be your decision, you support it like it is. Like you have your partner's back to everybody else in that room. When it's just you two or three or whatever, you guys are going at it, but you leave that room, like whoever's idea carried the day, that was your idea. You do that, man, that's a recipe for success.
I know we're on this topic a lot, but I like it because this is good content and information for people watching. So do you think setting up the partnership is crucial, where it's like establishing boundaries, the do's and don'ts, the corporate structure, all that stuff? Is that crucial when setting up a partnership? Is that where, because I think people make mistakes in that same area as well.
That's a great question. So the way that I do it is I have material terms. Like, hey, these are like general job descriptions.
You know all these legal names because you have a law firm. He just calls the boys, like, take care of this guy.
Exactly. So I'll get everything out there that we like. How much are we going to get paid? What do distributions look like down the road? Who's doing what? And then we'll do like a formal operating agreement where it's like, okay, this is what's going to happen if the business fails. This is what's going to happen if somebody passes away. This is what's going to happen if somebody gets addicted to cocaine. Like all these like crazy scenarios. You get that set, you get it signed, and you never look at it. Right? You don't use the operating agreement or those terms to be like, break it out like, hey, see, I told you, you're wrong. This is how you'll fail. Yeah.
So you're just using that as that's the last resort if something happens.
Lawsuit.
Yeah, lawsuit. So like, do your operating agreements, are they all standardized? You just change some of the verbiage?
Yep. Most of them are boilerplate. That's most agreements generally are going to be, the big chunks are going to be, the same language.
Yeah. I like that because I think people do that too, is they go into partnerships and joint ventures or something, and that full operating agreement is not in place, and someone starts to do something they weren't supposed to do, or they're overlapping. It's like, you're doing X and I'm doing Z. Let's stick to that unless we discuss crossing over, and then that's where the fights start happening, right? Someone's not doing what they're supposed to. And I like what you said too, though, is put it away, because what happens is, and I think this happens with us sometimes too here, is, you got a paper and you're like, yeah, you signed this. You said you were going to do this today and you're going to do this tomorrow, but you didn't do this today. You're in violation. Yeah. Then it becomes a he said, she said, and now the animosity starts, right? I'm guilty of that. So I like that you said, like, just put it away. We're all adults here. Now, what do you say if they're not cutting it? If is that where you start to say, hey, like we've talked about this 3 times already. Come on, like you operate now. Do you go back up the attic and get the operating agreement? No,
I think you go get something, but it's a chip that you can throw on the table. Yeah, it's like, hey, let's chat about this, dude. Our business it's in big trouble because it was my understanding that you were supposed to do X, Y, Z. Was that your understanding? Tell me what your understanding was. Okay, it sounds like now XYZ needs to get done. If you're not the one that's going to do it, let's solve this problem. Because regardless of what we said in the past, that doesn't matter. What are we going to do right now? Things change all the time. Things change. Family situations change. And the desire to be in the bit, all these things change all the time. That's okay. We still have the problem. Let's figure it out, and then bring something like, hey, what can I do to kind of what can I throw into the pot so that, we it's quid pro quo, right? You give me this, I give you that.
Yeah.
And approach it that way versus just taking it from them.
Yeah. So it's a give.
Exactly.
It's got to be a win-win.
Yep.
Everybody wins. I like that. So with all this stuff you're doing, all the business ventures, the real estate, I think you said you're building a new building.
Yep.
That's exciting, right?
It's awesome.
But how big is the building?
It's about 12,000 square feet.
12,000 square feet, and you said it's going to be a flex space.
Mm-hmm.
So I like the flex space. So that means you're going to take one spot or two spots and then lease out the other remaining spots.
Yep, exactly.
And then so does that is that building will be a separate entity itself as well, right? Or each one? Well, no, it'll be one, right? One entity will manage all of them.
Yeah, so we have...
It's one LLC, right?
So I have an LLC that holds our commercial property in Arizona. So this will be our second commercial building in Arizona.
Nice. Yeah.
So it will be under that same umbrella.
I like it because I think that's crucial too. Is like when I see this a lot too. I don't know if you see this, but I'm noticing it more and more. The more I'm kind of more I'm doing this, I'm paying attention to other people,
mm-hmm.
and I'm like, people are doing really well, and they don't go buy their own buildings and stuff. Their own property, they don't build it, they don't buy it, nothing. It's like, are you gonna rent forever?
Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, I don't know if you notice that, but I'm noticing it a lot.
For sure.
A lot. It's like, okay, you go make some money, put it into your office building, your new office building or something, because that's gonna pay you back. It becomes, our building's a business.
Exactly.
The drywall company pays the rent.
Exactly.
And, and in the other building, we're getting paid rent. And these are simple things
mm-hmm.
where you can generate more revenue. And if you want to exit something, it's an easier exit.
Mm-hmm.
You're not just getting rid of both, you're getting rid of one or whatever.
And then you get to control the terms of that lease. So if it's somebody's buying your business and it's leasing from the holding company, then it's like, hey, I'll sign a 20-year lease so you guys are good for 20 years, right? You have control over that.
Yep.
I look at real estate as another way to integrate, right? Like I was talking about how my pest control company needed a digital marketing agency, so I started one. Same with real estate. My pest control company needs a building.
Yeah.
So it's just another way to integrate.
And make some revenue.
And there's some great tax benefits there.
Of course, right? I love it. So as we start to wind down, is what's the plan for like 2024, 2025 for you? Is that looking better than ever? Is it looking, because we're going into election season.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things are happening. For us, we're gonna keep cruising through it, at a high speed. Obviously, trying to maneuver and make the right decisions. Right? What are you looking at? I think I don't know. You're paying attention to the rates. The Fed's probably not going to make any cuts. Right, they went from all these cuts to probably not making any cuts, so the interest rates may stay the same or even go higher. So do you pay attention to like what's happening in America, the world news, and does it intertwine with what you're doing? Your next moves?
I think it does a little bit. I'm not really on top of all the news because I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I think, and this is kind of tough for me to say, but the most money I've made in my life has been in times of recession.
Yeah.
So that's when the most opportunities are created. And they did a study and they found out more millionaires are created during times of recession than any other time. So I think there's going to be opportunities out there right now. There's a lot of baby boomers that are starting to retire, mm-hmm. and their businesses that they started or they got handed down to them are going to be for sale.
Yep.
So I'm acquiring companies right now. So looking for opportunities there with systems already in place. But yeah, I've slowed down a little bit with real estate. I try to buy a couple of residential properties every year. I'll probably push pause on that as I'm closing on a commercial building in Detroit, Michigan in 45 days. And then the build here in Gilbert, Arizona will kind of take up some of my time. But I'm not letting off the gas pedal. COVID happened and I immediately froze. I didn't know what to do. And so we stopped paying vendors. We had a hiring freeze. We decreased marketing spend, all these things. And that lasted a week. And then I'm like, hold on a second. Like cost per click on Google was dropping through the floor. So we're like, we got to double down. So we did the opposite, right? Warren Buffett talks about that. He says the most successful people are fearful when others are greedy, and they're greedy when others are fearful. So I'm going to do what I do. It doesn't matter the climate, the economic climate. There are ways to make money and build companies.
I think you hit right on the button, because it's going to be a shift. You know, like you said, the baby boomers, you know, and not only that is they're I think the youngest baby boomers like 57 or something like that, right? So those ones that are transitioning into retirement homes or retirement communities, now they got to sell their house. So there's more real estate coming up. They're selling their businesses. There's more businesses coming up. You know, there's always a shift. And like you said, in a downturn and people do lose, they go bankrupt, they go foreclosure, and it sucks for them, but it's the opportunity for the people that want the opportunity, that are going in. You're going in fearless, but you know, you understand the risk and the reward, but you have to go after it. That's what you're saying you're going to do.
Yeah. So during times like this, I tighten the belt with the toys and stuff.
So no frivolous spending.
Yeah. So although I really like cars, we invest pretty heavily in Ferraris actually, which that'll continue. We have 3 on order right now, but vacation homes.
So you have 3 on order for yourself.
Yeah, we have a company set up that where we buy and sell Ferraris.
Nice.
So partner and I. So during times like this, I'll tighten the belt and be like, okay, is this a want or is this a need, so that I can focus on the needs and then invest that extra. And that's one of the sacrifices I make. You know, I'm not a Gucci belt type of guy.
Yeah.
So
I like it. So this is good stuff, man. This is real good stuff. I think as we close, you know, can you give the listener, you know, that young capitalist type person that's growing, either they're, you know, going to go into entrepreneurship or they're just going to go become a manager. You know, what's that nugget you can leave them with as we close?
Man, I think it's this idea. They did this study about people that were on hospice care and they were dying. And this nurse, she just got curious and she started asking people about their lives and things they were proud of. And then the big thing is the things they regretted. Mm-hmm. And she found out, she wrote a book about it later on. And she found out that people, they regretted much more the things they didn't do than the things they did do. So that's the question for that young entrepreneur, for that 25-year-old, that 23-year-old. It's like, hey, man, now you're 85. Are you going to wish you went for it? Mm-hmm. Even if you fail, are you going to wish you went for it? And it's tough to have that type of perspective, especially at that age. I didn't have it. But that's the question is, speak with your wife if you're married, or husband, or whatever the situation is. But you're going to die someday. Yeah. Right? Live like you're going to die.
Live today like you're going to die tomorrow.
Exactly.
Do your best. Go after it. There's that, I'm going to say it wrong, but you probably heard that saying where one of the wealthiest places on earth is the graveyard.
Exactly.
Because there's all the dreams, the everything's there.
Yep.
You know, it's
just, they took with them.
They took with them. You know, so live your best life now.
Yep.
Keep learning, keep growing. You know, go after different things in life that are going to better you and better your future, and that we can live your legacy.
Yeah.
Right. I love it. Allan, I appreciate you coming on, man.
My honor, dude. My privilege.
Good stuff. And where can everyone follow you?
Yeah, I'm really active on Instagram. So at Real Allan Draper. I have a website, allandraper.com, but great places to find me.
I love it. So follow him, follow us, like and subscribe to all of our content, and be blessed.